Hey YouTube, I want to share my whole experience of what it was like to shoot and edit and film and deliver my very first wedding video highlight film. So just a bit about my background. I do have experience shooting weddings for photography, but I totally respect that video is a different thing and has different requirements, and we'll learn all about that today and what those things are. So to kick things off, I did what anybody would do, and I just started doing crazy research on YouTube, looking at who else is doing this in the industry, how are they doing it, what kind of gear, what kind of product are they delivering, what does it look like, and I learned a lot. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. And then I had to take a step back and look at what do I have, what is my gear capable of, what can I do that aligns with what this industry is doing to see where I sit. And what I ended up coming up with was, as an initial investment into this kind of business, I figured, let's just use what I have, try and adapt it as best possible without buying additional gear just to do this in case I didn't like it, and see what I could come up with. And I have a Rode GoPro 2 microphone, I think it's called, that I just kept on the body the whole time to capture audio as it was happening around me to get that atmospheric sound, which I was reading into on YouTube is really, really important. So what I learned from YouTube is there's multiple ways that you can deliver wedding videography. You could do the full 10, 12, 24-hour wedding, whatever, show them minute to minute the entire day and just have constant coverage. But that requires multiple cameras, multiple lenses, multiple people in different places at the same time. And I realized really quickly that is not what I want to do and also not what I can afford. That is a whole different ballgame. And then there's the wedding highlight side of things, which also has a scale of 1 to 100. So, I could take my gear and just do what I have with it, which was what I had planned to do. But there's guys who spend $30,000 on massive wedding highlight films with, fake models. They shoot on a different day than the wedding. They shoot nothing but the couple. And it's basically like a love story of just these two people in like a 5 to 10 minute clip. And I realized I don't want to do that either. I want a realistic wedding on the day with those people in that moment, with everybody they love around them. I narrowed it down to, let's use what I have, deliver a 5 to 10 minute, summary of what happened that day with music in a really, really creative way, using post-production techniques to kind of like cut and paste what's happening in that day with audio. So what I ended up with at the end of the day, it was a 10-hour wedding. I had about 2 hours of footage over about 100 clips. So I would take short little clips of videos throughout interesting parts of the day, moments, things that were happening, like let's say a bouquet being thrown, a really important kiss, an important dance, an important speech. I would just capture it, stop, wait for the next moment. And I captured the whole thing in 4K 60 frames per second in case I wanted to slow it down, which I saw was really, really popular online, creates a really nice effect, and I used pretty much all throughout my final video, more or less. And I also shot it in the non-RAW format. I don't know what you would call it, but it's not the Canon C-Log RAW. And from what I learned from talking to professionals in the industry was it's not really necessary. Yes, it's nice to have, and it takes more time and more skills to use, and the output is great, but the amount of time investment required to do that on 100 clips for 2 hours of footage is not really worth it. I like realism, I like speed and efficiency of things, but I also like quality. Letting the camera decide the color output, I was happy with it because I like the results of these videos. The camera, I know, does its thing well. So let's get into what I learned throughout that whole experience of shooting the actual wedding. Well, one we already talked about is that you don't necessarily need a lot of the gear that people are using online in their videos. I found I didn't really need the gimbal. I didn't really need a fly cam. I didn't really need a monopod. I could use all the stabilization in my gear and my tripod to get a very similar effect. Yeah, I'm sure it would be better if I had that, but I was really happy with my results, and I felt like they were almost equivalent to having all of that gear, sometimes if not on par. So I'm glad I didn't make that initial investment because it's not necessary to achieve very cinematic, creative results, although it's obviously a professional way to go. So that said, if you have all of this gear around you and fly cams and gimbals and monopods, one thing I learned is that if you had all that at your disposal with one camera body and one person, you can't possibly use it all over the course of a wedding. as you're switching gear around and switching lenses, you're losing time. Time that, the bride and groom are interacting, time that people are talking, time that people are having speeches, rings getting exchanged. You will absolutely miss something if you try to do too much with one person, with one body. Simplify it, keep your gear simple, keep your equipment simple. I still planned my shots out, but I had planned to do 2 different creative looks for each scene and only one was possible. Or if I did switch, I was missing something in between the switching. So if I was to go back and do it again, I would plan each one so that I only had one creative equipment look for each place that I went to. So basically you go to a new place, you set up and you shoot, and that's what you use. Another really important lesson I learned was about battery life. I have 2 batteries for the Canon R6, and the first one ran out within about 2 hours. So I had 1 battery left and about 8 hours of wedding. I never really realized that shooting at 4K with 60 frames per second and leaving the camera on this long was going to drain it so quickly. With photography, just shooting pictures, it doesn't consume as much energy over time as shooting video. So huge lesson learned there. You're going to need at least 4 batteries to be successful and secure for like a 10-hour wedding shooting 4K consistently. Luckily I had a charger on me that day and I was able to charge one of the batteries during some of the reception time since we were indoors and I had access to outlets, but came kind of close there. Another strange thing that happened was I was fighting with LED lights within the venue. I don't know too much about LED lights, but I guess they operate on a different frequency and maybe they sound like a pulse signal as opposed to a continuous output, since maybe they're battery operated. But what I needed to do at the venue that I didn't realize yet was lower my shutter speed to reduce the flickering of the LED lights, and I'll show you an example here of what that looks like. If your shutter speed is too high, you can actually capture the frequency at which the LED light is refreshing, creating this really annoying blinking light. So huge lesson learned there on how to combat that. Along with battery life is card capacity. I have 2 64 gigabyte cards and I've never even come close to filling these things up in a day, but I had filled a whole 64 gig card with this 4K video about 80% through my day. So I had enough coverage, but if I wanted to shoot maybe 4 to 6 hours of footage, I would have needed at least 3 cards at that size. So 150 to 200 gigabytes, have that much available to you across whatever size cards you want for a wedding day, because 4K footage is very, very costly to your storage size. Another thing I didn't think about was the audio levels of my camera. I have it set to about, I think, +10 for kind of general usage, indoors and outdoors. But if you get a band that starts playing through very loud speakers, +10 becomes way too strong for an audio input setting. So next time I'm going to remember during a wedding, if there's loud speakers around me or a band or live music, I'm going to drop that down to maybe 0 or even lower to see if I can capture more proper audio levels, because everything that the band played was unusable by my audio because of the setting. It was peaking way past the red. Speaking of audio, I borrowed a lav mic that day, and a huge win there. We pinned the lav mic to the priest or the person giving the ceremony part, so that the bride and the groom were on either side and everybody was around the lav mic, and I picked up perfect audio for the whole hour that they were speaking. And I was really happy I did that because it created a nice overlay for the video. So I'm definitely going to pick up one of these lav mics for my next wedding. And what it is it doesn't actually connect to your camera. It's a separate device that records separate audio, that when you go to DaVinci and you sync up what the Rode mic video is recording plus this quality audio on site, you tell it to sync and it immediately syncs the audio perfectly, and you could just switch and sub the audio where you want it. While we're on the topic of speeches, well, all of the wedding party were speaking their turns during the speeches. I was trying too much to get creative angles on what was being said, and I didn't focus as much on the audio, and I wasn't able to capture every single speech, the full audio. So the next wedding I'm going to make sure to record the entire speech section, not worry about the creative angles, just put it on a tripod, capture and record crystal clear audio, because that is a really important part of a highlight video, is what are the emotional things people are saying about the bride and groom so that you can overlay it into your video in sections. And I had enough of it, but I wanted more. And I could have made it even better because I remember things that people were saying that I wanted to put in, but I was like, oh, I was too busy changing lenses or I was in a different part of the venue at that time. But capturing every single spoken word during important, microphone areas, you must capture those and don't worry about the creative part of stuff. So I think that about sums up kind of the things that I learned from the wedding day. Overall, I loved the result that I had. I love the length of it. I love the audio I captured. I love the video, the color. I felt like being there the whole day was important so that I could capture everything that might have happened. Even though I didn't need all of it, I'm glad that I was there and I experienced what it's like to interact with these people, who's important, are they funny, do they have interesting things to say. It gives you cues to kind of who to be around and who's important. Since I had 2 hours of footage and 100 clips, I really only needed a small part of it. And in the post-processing stage, what I did, beginner rookie mistake, is I loaded all of it up and I started to cut all of it to see what I wanted. And I probably used up a lot of time I didn't need. If I was to go back and do that whole video again, I would look at my whole library of video from that day and pick only the most amazing moments and discard the rest. And if I had duplicates, just choose the best one. I found there was a lot of repetition of getting the couple kissing, of the wedding party. And when you want just a 7-minute video out of 2 hours, you really need to cut away and pare down to just the best. And I realize that now. It's about cherry picking the best content, not editing the whole footage slowly down until you get this nice, finished piece. You want to start with more of the rare gems before you create your masterpiece. And as I was building the video, going from 2 hours to 1 hour to 30 minutes to 10 minutes, I started to ask myself some different questions. I had a 10-minute video and I thought I was done. And then I woke up the next day and I'm like, do I want to watch this 10-minute video again? And I said no. And I was like, if I'm saying no, then everybody else is going to say no too. 10 minutes is just too long. It's sure there's a lot of good stuff in there, but who's actually going to watch it? And then I immediately cut a whole bunch of stuff that I was kind of on the fence about, and it became 7 minutes. And I liked it. But then I went a little further and I said, what if I did 5 minutes or 3 minutes? And I cut a whole bunch more. And then I got this feeling that, oh, you know what? Now I'm missing a lot of important stuff. I went too far. The whole 3 minutes was just about the couple, and I didn't get to see all of these people or all of this section. And those were really key moments and people, part of that party. And I knew then that I had to put them back in or go back to an old save file. So I let my gut kind of drive me how long the video should be based off of what I recorded and what the wedding was like. So I really think there's no right answer for how long these videos should be. It all depends on many factors. But you have to ask yourself, would you watch this thing again? And is anything important missing on whether you go too far or too small? So I really hope that this video helps anybody out who are photographers thinking about this, or videographers who are already doing this, just looking for a different perspective. That's what I learned, and I'm really excited to do another one. I was really thankful for that opportunity, and I would totally do it again. It was a lot of fun. So, thanks.